Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here with you today. My name is Cindy McDonald, and I am the hostess for these interviews with experts in the subjects that we care a lot about as counselors. And I'm very pleased today to have with me Kevin Mayne. Hi, Kevin.
Hello there, Cindy.
So Kevin has been, he is the Vice President of Enrollment at Landmark College. And Landmark College is a very special college. It serves a very unique and special population of students. So Kevin, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I've been in the field of higher education for 39 years. And I'm proud to say I don't really just have 1 year repeated an additional 38 times, but I've actually had experience across all areas of education, from admissions to financial aid, marketing to advancement, program development, administration, global citizenship, and most importantly, learning disabilities. And as an educator, I consider myself first and foremost a student advocate and a bit of a disruptive innovator. What I try to do is to help create programs that can assist students in overcoming obstacles and to achieve their educational goals. So for most of my career, I focused on working with students who have learning differences, and that's very important to me. All of this has led me to my current position, and as you mentioned, I'm the Vice President for Enrollment at Landmark College. And in this capacity, I oversee the areas of admissions, financial aid, and what we call short-term programs, which are summer programs. And we actually offer them for middle school, high school, and college students. We have 4 of them on campus here in Putney, Vermont, 1 in Colorado, in Denver, and 1 in California at UC Berkeley.
Wow, that's a lot of different things. So many of us may not be familiar with those different programs that are offered by Landmark. Can you tell us a little bit more about the different programs?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the last part.
Tell us a little bit more about the different programs.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So if you look at the logo of Landmark College, you'll see a path, but it's not a straight path. It's a windy one. And the reason for that is what we find is that most students, and in particular students with learning disabilities, have not always had an easy transition or an easy path on their educational journey. And so Landmark is all about pathways, what we like to affectionately call on-ramps and off-ramps. So we offer a lot of different programs for students to assist them. And that may consist of our online dual enrollment high school program, where we offer online courses through various high schools throughout the United States. And there's actually an on-site facilitator that assists the student. We also offer, as I mentioned, a number of summer programs. We have a fairly new post-grad year or gap year called Transition at College, which is a 1-year program to assist students to determine if college is the right path for them. And then we offer our 2-year or associate degrees and our 4-year bachelor degree programs. We also offer through LCERT, which is our research arm of the institution, graduate certificate programs and training. So as you can see, we work with a lot of different levels of students at all different points in their lives, trying to get them on the right path.
That's very interesting. So for students, as they're transitioning from high school to college, what are some of the challenges that they face? What are some things that they need to be aware of, or we as counselors need to be aware of?
Yeah, there's a lot of obstacles when it comes to transitioning from high school to college if you have a learning disability. I'd say the biggest probably difference is structure. So a student who has been receiving support in high school, it's built into their everyday life because their parents and teachers and other educators are guiding them. But once they get to college, they have to seek out services. So if you have an accommodation and you present this information to your professor in college, it's much different than in high school when it was built into your IEP. So when you get to college, all of a sudden you have to ask for accommodations, you have to have a letter, and you have to present it to each and every one of your teachers. So you can imagine if there's something that's your deepest, darkest secret, and all of a sudden you have to publicly go up and talk to somebody and tell them what a particular challenge you might have. As a result, only 17% of students nationally who have an LD and receive support in high school actually then take advantage of those supports in college, which is kind of a startling figure. You know, other differences might be the actual classroom experience. So in high school, your assignments are smaller. You have a lot of tests, you have a lot of quizzes, and therefore, you know, you have a lot of opportunities to do well in the class. Once you get to college, they're more infrequent. They count for more towards your overall grade. And you also may have fewer and fewer reading assignments or papers, but they're going to be more in depth. So it's a lot of reading all at once, longer papers that you have to do, and they become just complex. When you're in high school, your teachers will remind you about your assignments that are coming up. When you go to college, you have a syllabus, and you have to follow the syllabus, and you have to keep yourself on track. And this is where executive function skills kind of rear their ugly head. In high school, there's so many people that, you know, that tell you when to get up in the morning, when to go to bed at night, to eat your vegetables, to go to class, to remember to do this, do your homework. All of a sudden, you're on your own in college. So you have to manage your schedule, you have to manage your time, and you have to navigate a campus, a whole new environment for yourself. And so for a lot of students, their LD doesn't just end when they exit a classroom. It's with them when they're in the residence hall, when they're in the library, when they're on the playing field. And so you really need to focus on the differences that exist with your executive function challenges. Other things that come along with that is remembering to study how to regulate your emotions, self-advocacy. When you think about the different types of learning disabilities too, that can enter it. So for a student who is on the autism spectrum, they also have to deal with making new friends, navigating the social norms of college. So it's important to think about all those differences. As a result, what we find at Landmark is that 50% of our students that come into our college each semester are transfers. Why? Because for some reason or another, they were not able to make that transition successfully or as smoothly as they thought. And what typically happens, we find, is that they go to college, and the first couple of weeks, they're fine. All of a sudden, they're getting more readings, they're getting more challenges, the executive function challenges in and out of the classroom, and right around week 5, things start to fall apart. And so it's important that you be aware of this and be aware of, you know, the different issues that may come up for a student in that transition, and to prepare them through the advising process about what to expect. And one good thing that I always say is it's important for students to figure out, what do they do for themselves? What do your parents do for you? What does your college counselor or your teachers do for you? And to make a list. And then try to figure out, when you go to college, what are you going to have to do for yourself? And how do you transition over those months from your senior year in high school to college so that you're better prepared?
That makes a lot of sense, Kevin. So when students are visiting colleges, what questions should they be asking of the college for type of support to help them transition from high school to college?
Great question. And it really is important to be prepared. And so obviously visiting is important. You don't want to just look at a website or brochures, which always look pretty, and it never rains, and everyone's happy, and they all wear the college sweatshirts in the photos, and it's always diverse. But that's not always reality. So when you visit, specifically if you have a learning challenge, it's important to ask a number of in-depth questions. A lot of colleges won't like you asking some of these questions. And I've actually, separately, I've got a list of, I think, at least 30 questions that you can ask. Some of them might include, should I disclose or shouldn't I disclose to the school that I have a learning disability? What services are provided by the school, and are they geared specifically towards students with learning disabilities, or is it a generalized support program? Is the program monitored and staffed by full or part-time personnel? What kind of training do they have? Do they have ongoing training? Are they certified if they're an executive coach, for example? Is it something they just took on as an extra added, task that they have to do, like coaching a team? Or have they actually had training in being an executive coach? Mm-hmm. Do they even have executive coaches? Do they have specific programs, specific supports for specific learning disabilities? For example, if a student is autistic, they may be looking for a social pragmatics program and social pragmatics support in and out of the classroom. Does the college even offer that? And if they have these services, do they charge an extra fee for it? Is it built in? Is it one of those that you just have to drop in? And as we know from the last question we discussed, students won't always just take advantage of things unless they know about it and somebody assists them and makes that connection for them. Mm-hmm. You might also want to find out what kind of learning disability services or learning disabilities does that college or university support the best? What are they known for? Do they have educational technology? How is it utilized and how does it help students? And as I said, I have dozens and dozens of other ones that I'll share with you, Cindy, separately. But it's important to ask those questions, and it's important to pay attention to the answers and to do follow-up and to meet people that within the LD support program that they do offer. Don't just take their word for it that they have it. Actually go and investigate and find out for yourself and meet students who have been receiving support as well.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's more than just doing the campus tour. It's being able to go in and meet with the professionals and see what the program looks like and what it'll feel like to them.
They have to feel comfortable in that particular environment. So it's important to meet them, see if they feel comfortable. What is the environment? Where is it housed on campus? Is it hidden away? Or is it front and center? Will the student feel comfortable going to that center to receive support? Or is it built in to all aspects of the college? As I mentioned, when you have a learning disability, it doesn't just end when you walk out of the classroom or walk out of the support center. It's with you wherever you go. And we look at it at Landmark as a positive to be neurodiverse and a strength, not a weakness. But to receive support, you want to feel good about yourself and feel good about the support that you're receiving.
So as counselors and as advisors, we often meet with students who may or may not have identified learning differences. Mm-hmm. What advice can you give to counselors working with students, especially with a learning difference?
Sure. There's a number of things. First and foremost, I think you want to be empathetic and you want to get to know your student. So you want to find out their needs, their challenges, their strengths. You probably will have information on them, basic information from a file, on an academic profile. You may or you may not have LD testing, cognitive, or a psychoed eval. Any of that information can be helpful in advance so you can get to know your student. If you can access it, that would be a great thing. When you're talking to the students, you want to ask open-ended questions. And as they say, God gave you, 2 ears, 1 mouth. So you want to listen, and talk a third of the time. Have an initial conversation with them. If the parents are involved, you want to make sure that you're directing your questions to the student and you're letting the student answer the questions, and really try not to allow the parents to come to the rescue. And unfortunately, that's very difficult in this day and age. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I always talk about, and we talk about here at Landmark, that a lot of schools don't focus on is you want to kind of adjust, if you can, to the student's learning style. So for example, if you have a feeling that the student has ADHD, kind of attention issues, attention challenges, then they may be easily distracted. So where they sit in your office is important. You know, maybe don't have them face a window. Don't have them face an area where there's a lot of people coming and going, a lot of noise. If you have a lot of things on your desk, like a really messy desk, you might want to clear it off a little bit. If they're fidgety, don't reprimand them. It's easy to do when somebody is kind of jumping around or they're fidgeting their arms or, you know, like they got ants in their pants. You want to say something, but what you want to do instead is maybe have some things in your office that they can hold on to, or allow them to walk around the office while they talk to you. You know, don't be critical of their fidgeting. Have some sort of manipulative, such as a fidget spinner or something that they can use. If the student is autistic, you know, they may not look you in the eye, but they're listening. And they may answer the question without elaborating. Very concrete. That's difficult for you sometimes. So it's important, not only with them, but with other students as well, is to ask a question and then give time for them to reflect on it and then to answer. It's very easy for many of us, especially myself, I'm an extreme extrovert. So if I ask a question, I may jump in with another question or try to answer the question for somebody. But you've got to give people, specifically students with learning disabilities, time to reflect on the question and then to answer it. If they're on the spectrum as well, you may want to also use very factual, black and white, concrete, plain language. Ask and be very specific about what you're asking. And if you need to, you can clarify for them. You also should be aware of body language, not only yours, but theirs, and try to read, you know, how they're feeling about the situation, whether they're uncomfortable or not, and allow them to be uncomfortable. Let them know it's okay. Give them permission to take a deep breath, to walk around, as I said, and to feel comfortable. Be aware of your own, not only body language, but your rate of speech, how you're talking, your tone, your pitch, you know, and then, as we said before, find out what the student typically does for themselves. That's always a good opener as well. You know, describe your typical day for me. What do the parents do for them? And then talk to them about, well, what would it take, do you think, for you to do some of these things instead of your parents? Have you thought about when you go to college that they won't be there to do that for you? You know, above all else, you want to tailor your approach to that particular student. You want to make them feel comfortable. You don't want to grill them. Believe it or not, a lot of students have a lot of mistrust for adults and educators, particularly when they have a learning disability, because they may have been hurt or bullied in a classroom or outside the classroom throughout the years. And so it takes a lot to break down those barriers sometimes. But, you know, once you get to know them, find out what frustrates them, you know, what their strengths are, what they want to work on, then you can help them get back on that path to where they want to go and help them to realize their dreams.
That is very good advice. I think that the more we as counselors can be very sensitive to those needs, and I liked how you said, you know, being empathetic and listening more than anything. You know, having those barriers, we often see those as counselors for the reasons that you talked about. So thank you for that. So you've talked a little bit about some of the different things. I like the on-ramps and off-ramps that you discussed for Landmark. Can you give us a little bit more information about what differentiates Landmark College?
Sure. You know, Landmark's like most other colleges and universities when you think of the typical features of a college, you know, such as buildings, facilities, residence halls, class options, study abroad, athletics, clubs, but we're different in so many different ways. First and foremost, we're all LD all the time. That's what we do. We were the country's first all LD college, and we're also more recently its first neuro-diversity hub. So all the students that go to Landmark College have some form of a learning disability, ADHD, or autism. And we consider that neurodiversity, which is a different way of learning. And we don't consider that a negative, but instead we consider that a positive. You know, the world would be a better place if we recognize that everybody learns differently and everybody can bring to the table a different perspective. So we shouldn't squelch somebody for thinking differently or learning differently. We should embrace it. So we operate on an asset development rather than a deficit management model. We also embrace and utilize universal design in everything. So that means that we teach a class 3 different ways, every single class. We teach it visually, auditorily, and kinesthetically. All of our faculty and staff are trained in each of these different modalities. And as I mentioned, you know, we recognize that a person's journey is not a straight path. So we have those different options for them to help them. And we recognize that people come on and off those paths at different times. And there's different challenges that come with that. So we offer diagnosis-specific supports. And that's a biggie. A lot of colleges nowadays sort of have a one-size-fits-all, and they may think that LD support means tutoring, or LD support means one particular thing. But for us, we try to find out what will help that particular student in a way that works best for them. So we offer such things as executive functioning coaching, but our coaches are all certified, they're trained, and we have a whole team of them. We have a whole social pragmatics program that uses the PEERS curriculum, which is a 16-week curriculum, and it works on a variety of different socialization skills. We have mentors, and my favorite, we have a team of 9 therapy dogs on campus, and it seems to be growing and growing.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if that's a team, a litter, or what you call it, but the dogs even have their own office hours, and they're spread around campus, so students can go to them if they're feeling stressed, if they want to take a dog for a walk, if they want somebody to talk to that's not a human being, that, you know, obviously won't always judge them. They're great. We, the staff and faculty, utilize them as well. We also offer extensive educational technology for students with language-based disabilities, such as dyslexia, dyspraxia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia. We have LCERT, which is the research arm that I talked to you about. That particular program does cutting-edge research in the field of LD, but we also do a lot of training on campus and off for educators, such as yourself. And we do programs, symposia. We offer graduate programs, certificates in training in these different areas. And we also, I think one of my favorite biggest differences at Landmark is all students who come to Landmark, regardless of when they come in and out and how they do it, take perspectives in learning. And that's a class where a student has to read their own testing. And you'd be surprised how many students, never mind that they don't understand how they learn, but they've never had access to their own testing. A lot of parents have never understood it or read it. So students have to read it. They have to research it in our library. They have to articulate it. They have to then learn how to advocate for themselves. And instead of being ashamed of their learning disabilities, typically they become very proud of the fact that they're a different learner. And we consider that a neurodiverse learner. And that's why we're very proud of the fact that we are the sum of many different neurodiverse learners at Landmark College. Those are some of, there's a lot more differences. But again, we're very similar to other colleges in all the typical ways. It's just that we have a lot more. We also have a faculty member for every 6 students, a staff member for every 2 students, and a great track record of working with students.
That is very true. I've watched Landmark evolve over the years. I remember when it was just a 2-year school, and now it's offering graduate degrees. So
it's pretty exciting.
It is very exciting. Well, Kevin, thank you very much for your time today. I feel like we've learned a lot about how we can support our students who are neuro-different. and have that neurodiversity. So thank you.
It's been a pleasure, and I actually just wrote an article about this same topic, and so I'll send it to you to share with your students as well if you'd like.
That would be great. Thank you.
And I'm always open to any questions, so have anyone feel free to reach out to me.
Okay, will do.
Thank you, and have a great day, everybody.